Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips!
Hello and welcome to this video on how to structure and commence the annotation of your Paper 1 Guided Literary Analysis for Standard Level IB. Obviously, this is what used to be called a commentary. It's still called a commentary for high level, but it's called a guided literary analysis because of the guiding questions that are there to assist you and which the IB recommends that you utilize to structure your response. What I'm trying to do with this video is walk you through how to approach Paper 1, so how to do the first readings and how you do annotations, how to then structure your commentary and commence writing at least the introduction of the actual response. So let's get to work. In terms of how to use your actual exam time, the 90 minutes allocated to you plus the 5 minutes reading time, this will be my recommendation. Right? During the 5 minutes reading time, you read the two texts, the poem and the prose extract, and decide which one of those is more suitable for you. And once you've decided that, prepare some sense of what is your first impression, what is this text really about in your kind of unexamined state. What is the first thing that you see in this text? Because most likely that first impression is going to be valuable when it comes to formulating an actual thesis in your response. Then, when you're actually allowed to pick up your pen, when the examiner says you can start writing, you want to use the first 20 to 25 minutes to annotate, plan, and link your argument together before you even start writing anything in your exam booklet. And this is really important. It's worth, even if you go up to half an hour, it's time well spent because you still have plenty of time to write a cohesive response without having to stress. So use that time to really create an essay that works well. So then use the next 60 minutes to write a lucid response that will convince the marker that yes, you are right, your thesis is convincing and I fully agree with the argument you're making. And then save a bit of time at the end, at least 5 minutes, maybe up to 10 minutes, to proofread your commentary. And at that stage, hopefully you have a bit of a checklist of your pet mistakes, whether that is mixing up certain homophones, or whether it's overusing certain phrases, or losing the level of the register sometimes and becoming informal. Whatever your pet mistake is, make sure that you use a bit of time on the end to fix them up. So the bulk of this video will be focused on the planning time, what to do with those 20-25 minutes that we've suggested. So the very first thing, as I said, is to formulate a first impression. So you think about that in the reading time, and then as soon as you're allowed to pick up a pen, somewhere on your sheet, just jot down what interested you about this passage, what made you choose this text, what do you think it's about. But don't at this point let this influence your response. Just keep it in mind so that you can come back to it later. Okay, then you start reading through the passage several times and annotating it. And remember that idea that we talked about in class of reading it in a two-dimensional way, or even in sort of a one-dimensional way, and just observing what the text contains. So just seeing, oh, here's a long word, here's a short word, that's an interesting sentence, what does this word mean? And just jot them down without spending any time thinking or wondering at length at this point. If you find yourself already at this stage running out of energy, then go back to your mnemonic. Right? That's what that's there for, to remind you of what kind of things to look for in the text. Right? So then you start looking, what is the mood like, what is the tone like, what's the narrative stance here, is there a particular type of imagery that stands out, are the sentences long, short, how are the paragraphs set up, etc., etc. So work through that mnemonic to allow you to find the detail of the passage. Still without thinking or wondering, just observing. And make sure you get through the entire passage and that you cover all paragraphs if you're doing the prose, and all lines if you're doing the poem. And then once we've gotten to that stage, then you start thinking and kind of coming up with ideas, and then using your highlighters and numbers to group those ideas together. Okay, and then finally you can write your topic sentences still on a planning piece of paper or on the actual extract before you start writing on your exam, in your exam booklets. So structure the order in which you're going to integrate that evidence before you get down here to actually start writing the essay itself. So in order to demonstrate this and exemplify what I'm trying to say, I've used the May 2004 paper, a passage that is about, well, the prose passage called Hanging Rock. It's not called Hanging Rock, but it deals with the bridge at Hanging Rock. I've placed both the annotated and the clean copy of that on Schoology for you to access as you watch this video. Should you like, you can stop the video here, go back and actually annotate that passage for yourself first. It might be interesting to see what you come up with before you've seen my ideas and my thoughts about that passage. And you can attack it without being influenced by my impressions. So when I first read that passage, this is the observation that I made as my first impression down the bottom of the page. And I apologize for the resolution here. It didn't turn out well when I enlarged it. But what I wrote down the bottom was, it appears to be about connections, light and dark, new and old, city and country. There also seems to be a connection between the bridge and the human body. Is it symbolic? Is it metonymy? That was my first impressions. That's kind of where I will come back when I start generating my actual topic sentences about this passage. So as I mentioned before, the first thing now is to just see the passage, just observe it, just see what you can see straight away in terms of prominent words, in terms of repeated sounds, in terms of long or short sentences, those sort of things that stand out. Might be odd word choices, might be things that are repeated. Just go through it and just underline things as you observe them. And I'll show you what I observed in the passage from Hanging Rock. So here are my initial notes on this passage. Oh, sorry, I thought it would go on top. We'll move this one over here. So I've noted the palest kind of blue and the quiet light, two birds flying together in formation, the brow of the hill, the fork in the road, someone had tied a stone, she laughed and it noised like a bark, and then we have a dog twisting its head, etc. So anyway, you can see things that I've observed here as I've gone through it. And I'm not making any judgment about these aspects at the moment. As you can see, my page is purely, there's no writing on it beyond that first impression down the bottom. It's purely trying to make observations about the passage. If you want to have a closer look at this and compare it to your notes, then stop the video here and then come back to the other things later. So once you've completed those two stages, you've jotted down your first impression and you've done the first scan and just observed the passage, the next thing is now to read the guiding questions. Now, because this is an old exam from 2004, it still has 4 guiding questions. At that time, they were there to guide and they weren't mandated as part of the actual response. Obviously, in your case, you will only have 2 questions and they will be a bit more meaty to allow you to use them as the structure for your essay. So what I've done is I've crossed out 2 of these questions and highlighted the 2 that I'm going to use as my guiding questions for this passage. So the first one is explore the significance of the bridge, and the second one, consider the use of contrast in the passage. So have a look at the question, make sure the questions, make sure that you understand what they're asking you, and then go over the passage again. And this time notice techniques and effect which within those parts that you've already underlined. So look back at your annotations and then try to write something about each of those underlines. Some of them you might realize that's not important at all, that's not interesting, I'm skipping that. But highlight or sort of comment on the ones that you've done that you think are useful, and obviously if you see something new then add to that, of course. So here's what I've done with my annotations of Hanging Rock. So the blue underlining is what we've seen before, and now I've added the writing and the comments to each of those. So I've highlighted the she in the beginning, that she's the only human in the passage. I've talked about the symbolism, the fact that the birds are united here, because I've observed obviously there's a lot of unification or unity throughout the passage. I've highlighted a few instances of personification here, and then how there seems to be almost a judgment passed by the dog, the way he turns to her, and is the barking of the person, is that related to the dog in any way? As we move further down, yes, well, you can see the comments, and again I'll do the same thing. I'll stop the video so that you can go back and read my annotations should you so like. Again, they're on that document on Schoology, but sorry, that's not going to work. We'll do this. So you can read them on Schoology, or you can, but obviously they'll be highlighted and covered. But if you want to read this version, then just stop the video right now. So step 4, you've now done the first 3. You've highlighted your first impressions. Sorry, you've written down your first impressions. You've gone through and observed the passage. You've tried to explain the central techniques and how they might relate to what you're trying to say. You now come back to the guiding questions and try to write an actual answer to each guiding question, and that's going to form your 2 topic sentences that will hold your response together. So in this case, my first topic sentence, first question, as you remember, was explain the significance of the bridge. So my topic sentence in response to that is: the bridge serves as a symbol of unification. Beyond connecting 2 places on opposite sides of the river, it also becomes a manifestation of this through its own construction, right? Because the bridge is made up of integral pieces that seems to be contrasting, so it becomes a symbol of unification itself. So, and you note that the green highlighter on the symbol of unification, that's going to be my color as I go through the passage again now, and look back at my annotations and highlight anything in that green highlighter that I think would serve and fit into a paragraph on how the bridge is a symbol of unification. So this is how my passage turned out after that. So you can see there's a couple of lines on the first page, and first half of the first page, but particularly down the bottom of the first page, line 34, 35, how the bridge is constituted. There's some loss of individuality in the pieces because each piece had a piece removed of it, but they lock tightly together, so they come together to form this bridge. And the way the bridge looks, it was like 2 people holding hands. And then there's a great deal of language that has to do with unification and coming together on the second page, lines 44 to 51. They fit it together, there's an interplay, there's light and shadow, they stood drawing squares and long rectangles, interlinked, interlocked between her page and the pencil. Right, it's a lot of words that have to do with coming together and locking into one another, 51, and how that all becomes a complexity in the very last line of the prose extract. It's not as simple as it seemed. So that's kind of, those elements will form my first paragraph. I would use those green highlighted bits as the evidence when I'm proving how the bridge has become a symbol of unification. And then I repeat the same process with the second guiding question. I write a sentence responding to that second guiding question. So let's have a look at that one. So the second guiding question is saying, consider the use of contrast in the passage. So I'm saying the power the bridge has to unite is emphasized by the use of contrast throughout the passage. So the fact that we're uniting contrasting elements. And I mentioned some of those before. So if we'll have a look at the passage, here are some of those. So this is the pink highlighter going through the passage now, highlighting the use of contrast. So here we've got the contrast between the dog and the lady. We have the contrast between natural and artificial, right? There's the metallical element of the river, ironically, and we have another example of that where the bridge becomes almost man-made, becomes a man-made object as well. There's the white ute, again something man-made, in this dark and secretive place. And then we have the bridge described initially as quaint and clumsy and primitive, and distant from mankind, but then later on it becomes this great complex weave of things. And the idea of contrast really comes together, obviously, in the end, from line 56 onwards. We get light, dark, and the bridge has reduced to its essence, simple lights, but they're not as simple as they see. So it appears simple, but it's not simple, and there's that complexity in that contrast as well. So that covers the two topic sentences and would potentially become a fairly cohesive essay on its own. However, if time allowed, I think I would go a bit further with this passage, particularly because if you look at the annotation just visually, it's a bit underdeveloped, particularly in this area. I've only got 3 or 4 quotes highlighted here, and also this bit, there's a bit of the blue that I haven't really utilized. And so I would probably take my thesis one step further with a third topic sentence. But that's not something that's mandated, but time allowing, it probably would make sense. So here's my third contender. If I had time, I would also write a paragraph under this topic sentence. To further emphasize the power of the bridge, Grenville makes it appear almost more human than the female protagonist. Partly because I feel that idea of personification is really prominent in this passage, and therefore I think it's worth including. So, and here's the highlighter. So here I've gone for the orange or red, whatever that highlighter is, and these are the aspects that I think are worthy to look at. So you can see early on, there's that sense of personification, the brow, the hill, versus the fork in the road, which is it's not personified, but it's an element, an object that humans use. And then we get this contrast between her and the dog, and who's actually more human there, and who's judging whom. And then there's that sense of the bridge kind of splitting the town. So it's almost as if the bridge has a will, or that the bridge is steering the population of the town in some way. And I would talk about how particularly down line 32 here, the quaint, clumsy thing, which really sounds almost as if you're describing an elderly person, and that's furthered in lines 37 to 39. Each timber had its own colour and its own personality. Fine streaks of red dried blood in the grain of the timber, and an old-fashioned Marcel wave haircut in the grain of the timber as well. If you're not sure what a Marcel wave haircut is, have a look at some 1930s photos. If we turn to the top of the next page, she talks about the underbelly of the bridge, so again personifying it in some capacity. So if you bring all those ideas together, I think the idea of the human personification in the passage would be worthwhile, and there's enough there to develop into a reasonably good and reasonably lengthy paragraph as well. So that concludes the annotation aspect of the passage. You've gone through, you've annotated, you've highlighted, you brought ideas together, and pretty much the paragraphs are, the evidence for your paragraph is ready. You just need to actually do the writing of it. So then we're going to shift our attention for a moment to the introduction of a commentary. And this is like any other essay, really. In your first sentence, you want to introduce the text, including the author and the text type. So whether you've chosen a poem or it's a prose extract, or if it's from a travel journal, or whether it's from you think it's a novel or a piece of fiction, just kind of flag that, yep, I know what this is. And then give a scoping sequence where you summarize the subject matter of the plot line, so you don't have to go through and tell the story as you go through your commentary. An actual thesis is not mandated for your standard level responses. It's something we'd expect at higher level, and you might end up having one anyway, because you might want to bring your two guiding questions together. It would be nice if you could. In my case, my first guiding question, my first topic sentence almost becomes the thesis for the essay, because the others come back to talk about that unity as well, and therefore that almost becomes the thesis of the essay. But as I said, it's not mandated, it's not actually on the marking criteria. As long as the essay is well structured, then you're fine. And then you have your topic sentences that are going to respond to the guiding questions, and some kind of segue into stanza 1. So, having said all that, I've done a introduction example based on the topic sentences and the ideas that I presented you with in here. So they're on the next slide. Let's have a look at those. So here's my example introduction for my guided literary response on Kate Greville's The Idea of Perfection, which is what I've called Hanging Rock throughout the video. The passage from the novel The Idea of Perfection by Kate Greville follows a woman who, after becoming curious about an infamous bridge, seeks out and describes it. So that first bit is identifying the novel, so we know what text type it is. It's talking about giving us the title of the extract and the author. Yeah, they're the first three things. And then this becomes the scoping sequence sentence as well, because I'm giving you the content, the subject matter, what happens. It follows a woman who, after becoming curious about an infamous bridge, seeks it out and describes it, which is the entire plot of it, right? Sounds rather uninteresting when you hear it in that way. In the passage, the bridge is presented in 3 different ways. So here I'm going to have 3 topic sentences, and here they come. It becomes a manifestation of unification, not only connecting 2 physical places, but embodying unity. So that's pretty much the topic sentence that we worked with while doing the annotations, right? I've tweaked it slightly in this final expression, but it's more or less the same. And then we move on to the second topic sentence. The power of the bridge is emphasized in that it appears to unite contrasts. Right? That's what the second paragraph is about, contrast, and how they are brought together in unity. And then lastly, my third paragraph is going to be about this. To further emphasize its power, Grenville presents the bridge as almost human. So there's the idea of personification, and I could move on to that paragraph. So hopefully that's been somewhat helpful in terms of thinking about how you can structure your own responses. And we now move on to some activities for you to take this further. I'm hoping that some of you took that challenge to annotate the passage for yourselves before you watched the video, and thereby you might have completely different ideas to me about this passage. I haven't even read the Marcus report from that year, so I'm not sure if I'm barking up the wrong tree entirely, but I think it makes fairly good sense what I've presented. So if you have done your annotations, it would be great if you wrote your own guided literary response based on those to kind of see how you progress. Alternatively, if you struggle with the expression, if I've repeatedly said to you, we need to work on how you express your ideas, then take this chance to use my evidence, my analysis, to write those 3 paragraphs. So write the paragraph about the unification aspect, write the paragraph about the contrast, and write the paragraph about the personified bridge, and see how they come together into a commentary using this introduction that you've got in front of you. Alternatively, obviously, print off another passage and go through the same steps. So go through the 6 steps of annotation that we've talked about, and then write your own introduction, and either bring me annotations plus introduction, or if it's more to your liking, bring me the full commentary. The main thing is that you take this and have some sort of action following it, that you're not just sitting back, yep, that was interesting, but I'm not going to do anything else about it. I want to see something produced from this video. Okay? Obviously, come and chat to me in class if you want to have some further clarification or ask some questions about this video. I hope it's been of use, and we will talk soon.